pets can decline these things, but we should absolutely be talking to them about the other things. And there are places and destinations they go that this is important. If you don't know what the health risk is, where the people are traveling to, CAPC is a great organization. It will give you, it does right now, US and Canada, but you can also Google, hey, if my pets or if my patient is traveling to the West Indies, what's the health risk there? We should
Yeah.
be doing a little bit of research for the client to tell them what the health risk is. Well, maybe rabies is the only vaccine requirement, but hey, they have a high lepto rate. You need to make sure your pet's vaccinated for lepto. Like, there's places right now in Europe that are having a leishmaniasis outbreak. We don't in the US even have that vaccine, but
Mhm.
you should tell them, hey, you need to talk to a veterinarian over there in Europe about potentially getting that vaccine. But you wouldn't know that without doing some research to help the client protect their pet. Because all the EU cares about is microchip and rabies vaccine. They don't care about the health of the pet. They're not mean. That's just not what they're looking to do. But we have resources to help the client and figure that out and make those recommendations. It's up to the client.
Yeah. So usually that's right. So the import regulations do, and Leslie said this, has to do with protecting public health. So they're not going to impose requirements to protect necessarily, so not all destinations to protect the health of the pet. You will see some destinations that will require vaccinations. Um, so returning to the United
Returning.
States, this has been the big new it's not new per se, but I'll let Leslie talk a little bit about screwworms.
Right. So screwworm is a basically like a bot type of larva of a fly that burrows deep into the skin and the muscle tissue. Why this is such a big concern is that one, we've eradicated it from the US. We're trying to prevent it from coming back in. And this could decimate our livestock, our meat production. It's a risk to people. In fact, there was a recent article just a few weeks ago about a person came back from Costa Rica and had a screwworm infection. And we're not doing this though to protect people as much as we are doing it to protect our meat industry because it would just decimate. All the meat would be damaged from this fly larva.
Yeah.
So you're telling people, and people I've had these conversations with clients, you don't need anything to go to Mexico, especially us in California. They don't require a health certificate. Just head on over there. Well, we're doing a disservice to those people because I just had a client who came to us who said, because I got stopped at the border and my pet couldn't come back into the US. I didn't have a health certificate. I didn't have my rabies certificate. And I didn't know that there was a screwworm certification that I needed to get while my pet was in Mexico. And she said, I started to panic. But when I had asked my veterinarian before I left what I needed, they told me I didn't need anything. So we need to not give advice if we're truly not understanding what these rules and regulations are. Because all of our veterinarians are USDA accredited, I receive an email. It's practically every day, if not 3 or 4 times a week, telling me that something has changed in some sort of import or export of animals. And if you are not going to keep up on this, or your veterinarian is not going to keep up on this, you need to do your research every time. And I can have sent a pet to someplace hundreds of times, but every time I'll pull up those regulations and take a look at it because things change overnight. And I've had that experience where that has happened, where the client started the process under one regulation, but by the time we got down to the end, parasite treatment was now required and it needed to be done within a certain time frame, and we were like, oh no. So you cannot rest on your laurels and just say, I think I know what it is. You have to be sure. You have to give good advice. And this is where they start coming to Maria's practice and my practice because they've gotten bad advice somewhere else. So
We're
don't,
not trying to stress you out.
yeah,
Just
just know this
all
is a
in or all
requirement.
out. It usually helps also decrease your
Yeah.
stress. The more committed you are to it, it does, you know, I said we're expert, but it's not. It's just a commitment to keep on top of it. Um, and it's interesting. So that'll lead us into just rethinking pet travel because I think, somebody said that stresses me out so much, or, and we hear that all the time and we understand why. Um, because there's just so much information to process. And as Leslie said, every day like it could change. So people will be like, "Oh, what are the rules for that destination?" And I will tell them, I don't know today what that is. So you just get in the practice of not memorizing any rules. So like, don't you do this all the time? Yes, but rule number one is don't memorize the rules. You can have, like the basis, but like Leslie says, it constantly changes.
Hey,
Uh,
Maria, this is the good part to
okay.
interject with that 7001 health certificate that you used 10 years ago is
Yes,
probably not accepted anymore where you're trying to give that to clients. So again,
exactly.
those rules have changed for domestic travel as well, which we're not really focusing too much on. But
Right,
know that kind of retire that baby. And it's certainly not going to be something that you generate from your PIMS that you put across the top health certificate. And we get
right.
those. I've had
Yeah.
people call me from the airport. I got turned away. I got this health certificate from my veterinarian. I'm like, take a picture, text it to me. I'm like, well, that's why you're having a problem. So
No
postpone your
more,
travel.
forget about
Come
that.
on in.
Unless that's the form issued by
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
destination, just put it out of your mind
yeah.
because yeah, it's not the right form. So I just, I will always encourage practices to rethink pet travel, right? So we think, like I wrote here, it's dismissed as paperwork, tedious, logistical, not real medicine. I've heard that. And I will, beg to differ because when you take a step back, you know, it is all these things. Those clients are very, very receptive. They want their pets healthy. It is an opportunity to build that trust with the client, build that relationship. The idea that and we touched on that in the beginning, that it's a one-way travel, oh, they're moving, it doesn't matter. That's not true. Even if they're moving, people talk. We got the internet, all the social media. So you put it out, you put it forward, and it is really all these things. And these, in my practice, and in Leslie's practice, it is all these things for us. And so a lot also like when they get back. I didn't even put on here, a lot of times they ask about sedation, and it, comes to a good conversation even about, things like that and trying those things. But it is all these things. We are running out of time, Leslie. So
I know.
I
We
will give it
talked
to
a
you.
lot about this.
Yes.
So think of travel if this is something that you have somebody passionate on your team about. I have a whole travel team that does this. Maria has a travel team. Although a lot of it does boil down to me having the conversations with the clients to set it up. The doctors are kind of handed the travel on the plate, and then they're like, this is what it's you can make this a profit center. And we have a lot of repeat travelers that, I have a client that goes to Hawaii to visit one daughter a couple times a year, and their son lives in Europe. So, and they're taking that pet everywhere. So it's
Mhm.
important to know that this can be and they were going somewhere else before they came to us, and they've kind of stuck with us now because they know that we can help them with their pet and the travel lifestyle that they live. So it is definitely something to consider as a profit center. But as Maria and I have talked about, somebody's got to go all in on this and really make sure that you're doing it right. And we can give you recommendations after follow up with us. We can help you with what that looks like.
Mhm.
Um, it is client service. There's a lot of touch points. I had a client recently. I love when they send me pictures after they reach their destination. I had a client tag me on Instagram, and I got to see everywhere the dog went in Europe. He was in front of the Eiffel Tower. He was, on this riverboat. Like they tagged me like twice a day where this dog was traveling. They were so grateful for my assistance.
Nice. It's
It
not.
and it's
I
really
just
great. It's
I
client
just got a
service.
yes, I just got this really nifty box of Greek things. And I'm just like, they carried that all the way back for me.
Right.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I've had, people bring me the Hawaiian whatever, the
yeah,
Hawaiian macadamia chocolates,
yep.
right? But there's systems that you can put in place to make this an easier process. And you can also partner with pet travel agents and shipping agents. They can also help you with this as well. It's best to have a relationship because there are a lot of these companies out there and they're not always specialists in all countries. So you really have to know who you're dealing with, but that is an option. And then Maria, we got a few minutes here. So
All
let's
right.
talk about software tools
I
and
want
then
to
we'll
make
take
sure
some questions.
we we want to make sure we leave some time, but you know, PassPaw, I co-founded PassPaw last year with a great team. And it is a software to actually help you manage the whole thing. So it really does deal a lot with the education and the rules and the client side of engagement. So I encourage you just to check it out, passpaw.com. And so if you reference this webinar, you will get two certificates to try, two pet applications to try for free. So, but it's worth checking out. There is help out there. And I do all the compliance things so you can know that it's pretty good. Uh, so let me,
And I helped Maria beta test it and
oh,
it,
yes,
it is
you did.
amazing.
Yes,
So
you
there's
did.
it
Leslie
is
was
amazing.
was a guinea pig, so it's been tested. The practices, our practices use it. It's a lot of data in there, so make your lives easy. I kept Leslie and I always tell people to do it, and then I'm like, let's see if this will help practices do it and capture that profit. Um, and so questions and answers now. So I know you guys
Right.
have probably had a lot of questions.
Yeah, there was a
We will-
couple. Let me go back and
All
look.
right.
Okay, so
And then
Kelsey,
our
uh,
emails are there too for follow-ups.
Yeah.
perfect. So Kelsey's question, this was back when you were doing the certificate mistakes.
Okay.
She said, does the initial versus booster have to be on the certificate or just the date given / date due?
Given
So well, if you follow the like kind of the original form, yes, there's a spot for that to be checked. I see a lot of certificates that do not have that on there, and that is fine because the assumption then would be if it's a 3-year vaccine that this is a booster, and if it's a primary, it's a 1 year. But to prove that, you'd have to have the primary certificate. Like that's why a vaccination history is so important. So no, you don't I don't know unless your state specifically requires it. Our state does not in California, but there might be a state that does have that as a requirement on your certificate. So you're going to have to check. But as long as the client has a history, a historical history of rabies vaccines, we can show which one's the primary and which one's the booster. But there's a lot of places that, again, any lapse makes us have to start over. And that's why you have to see the whole history.
Okay, perfect. The next question, which is a great one, it says, what do we put for microchip if there's no microchip?
So you can write none found, but that states that you scan the pet. But
Mhm.
that's a conversation that you'd have with the client and say, hey, just so you know, like there's a spot for microchip on this certificate. We recommend that all pets be chipped. This would be a great time to get that taken care of because if you're going to travel, if we don't do it before or on the day that you're getting the rabies vaccine, you may have to redo your rabies vaccine. Like it's a thing. So just giving them that information, convert chip for their pet.
Yep.
There
And
was
I
one.
would say, yeah,
Oh,
if your
sorry, Mark, go
PIMS
ahead.
let you write not found, so like that way you've checked.
Yes.
Leaving it empty just it becomes easier once it's part of your protocol, but at least to start by seeing that not found, and the client will see that on their certificate, you've communicated a piece of information to them.
And Laura has a question. If a pet has a lapse in rabies vaccine, say like 5 to 6 months, is the rabies vaccine that you give next considered a 1 year or a 3 year if the patient is traveling?
1 year. 1 year.
Yeah, there are some places like Hawaii, just for
Yeah.
example, Hawaii doesn't care about lapses.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of unique in that way because they take the general US requirements. But
Mhm.
again, if they're returning from out of the country, like there's a contradiction there. Like the states don't necessarily align with what these new CDC regulations are.
Right. And that's where the rabiesaware.org and reaching out to state veterinarian, I recommend that you do know the regulations of your state.
Okay, excellent. And there was one kind of comment, but I wanted to say it. So this was from back when you were doing the mistake
Mhm.
form. Some countries will not accept the form if the year is not in a 4-digit format, and they've encountered that problem. So I thought that was pretty good to say.
Uh, which form? Oh, like the rabies?
It was
Rabies
when you
certificate.
were doing that mistake one. That was when the comment was made.
Yeah, generally it's best to use 4-digit years in, so that's part of the setup, I think, generally in your PIMS. Um, but it's better to do it that way, and to have it consistent, I think is also better to have it
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
mean,
great for
more
the
information is better than less in that regards.
Yeah.
Last question, kind of related to one that Laura just asked. She said, is it the same if the pet travel is several days overdue? So that was related to the pet lapse and rabies vaccination.
A lapse is a lapse.
They
One
don't care.
day, a
Yeah.
lapse is a lapse. So it doesn't matter. They're all destinations that if they talk about a lapse, the United States is also serious about that lapse.
In EU countries, it's a trips people up all
Yeah,
the time. They're like, I
right.
didn't lapse. I got it in the same month.
Yep.
Doesn't
And
matter.
there's like EU has a 21-day wait after that, primary. So generally, if your client is traveling and they've come in for that rabies and you've had to do this 1 year thing, make sure you update your reminder in your system. That I will say, because if it's a default, your 3-year rabies vaccine, so either update the reminder or use the code for the 1 year. That would be better. So just so that they don't get into this problem again, because usually people, once they travel, it tends to become part of their lifestyle. So they're going to do it again, most likely.
Yeah, and it's sad that we're not all on the same page, but again, this is a states' rights issue. This is a country issue. Like
Mhm.
everybody has a different rule or regulation, but if you stick with kind of the basic rules, I'll have a conversation with the client and I'll say, well, this will work if you're because a lot of clients aren't just going to go one place. I have clients that call and they want travel advice for going 3 or 4 different places that have 3 or 4 different regulations. I'm like, well, it will work for you to go there, but it's not going to work for you to go there. So if we want to try and align all of that, this is what we need to do. And, you got to make the choice.
Right.
Because it's a hard conversation to have with clients about that, it works for this, but it doesn't work for that.
Yeah. There's another question, and it's kind of a statement question. Due to
Sure.
these regulations, is it best to have a 1 year's rabies only to be safe?
I would say no, Leslie. I mean, I wouldn't say just start. I wouldn't change your whole protocol regarding rabies and do them all 1 year.
So,
I think work with your microchip protocol. And what do you say?
well, I would say probably not because but there are some states that have a higher rabies incident, and then every rabies vaccine is a 1 year.
Yeah,
But in California, as long as we can show the pet has had one vaccine in its lifetime, the next vaccine is a 3 year.
yeah,
But we talked to them about if this is for travel purposes, but you had a gap of 6 months, now we have to go back to a primary. But for your licensing purposes, it still works for 3 years. So, you have to tell the client all the information, and sometimes it's a choice they have to make. but I wouldn't just turn all vaccines into 1 year.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things
So
that you have to explain.
I might have another question, and then we might have Laura connect directly with you guys if she has more questions.
Sure.
So it says, so I understand if they lapse on rabies, you give 1 year that is now considered the initial rabies. We now have to abide by any time delays from when the rabies was given.
So not, again, it's what regulation are we talking about? So if you're talking about to return to the US from a high rabies incident country, then the answer is yes. If you're talking about traveling to the EU, the answer is yes. There's a lot of countries that only accept a rabies vaccine for 1 year. But for your own state and for licensing purposes, that might not be correct. For Hawaii, that is not correct. So you have to know what the rule is specifically for that specific travel destination. And I tell the client, there's always 3 things that we have to, when you call me about travel, we have to worry about your destination requirements and any places you might stop along the way, or once you get there, your airline requirements, and then your return to the US requirements. They sometimes align, but not always. So we might have to be meeting 3 different requirements. So that's why this is a complicated process. That's why this gives people headaches and stress, because you have to take all of those things into consideration when we're talking travel.
And it's easy to, as part of your protocol or your flow, if you feel like you have clientele that may be traveling, just work it into your intake. Ask the question, and that way, you can better prepare them before, it gets to that point. It's just a discussion point. Again, it's easily worked into wellness, annual exam, wellness type appointments as part of, do you plan to travel? And they may tell you like, oh, I plan to go hiking every weekend. Oh, okay. Well, your dog doesn't have a lepto vaccine on board. So, we got ticks over here. So,
right.
or we have, wildlife here. So, or whatever it might be. So you could work it in that way.
Yeah, it's part of a lifestyle discussion, and we have that as part of our doctor's assistants take the initial history every appointment, and that's built into the template. They have to ask those questions, and then we have to look at the answers to the questions to then extrapolate what are the recommendations for that specific pet based on its lifestyle.
I love that question and questionnaire thing, because I think a lot of hospitals use digital forms to ask questions and things. You could add that as a digital form when they come in checking in for their appointment. So it's not even something that someone has to spend the extra time initially. They can get that form and then ask more questions based on that. That would be a time saver. Thank you for that, Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great questions, guys.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it.
I don't hesitate to read. Like as soon as we hang up, you'll be like, "Oh,
I know." I messaged Laura that, and I said, "Please feel free to reach out to either of them. They're super helpful. They'll answer your questions." So I know I just kind of did that, but I knew you guys would help her, so I wasn't worried. Anyone else, if you have questions that are not, maybe you think about it later or whatever, please feel free to reach out. The goal of today's webinar was to really get people educated on some of the things that they maybe didn't realize, or they thought because their PIM software didn't do it, that it just wasn't able to be done or wasn't really necessary. And I think that's that message was really conveyed. So thank you, ladies, for doing that. I appreciate that. It was a great presentation. Thank you so much, everyone that participated and attending. Thank you so much for attending. And I will upload this. I think I had a glitch. Somehow I got kicked out. I don't know what happened. So I'm going to try to figure out how the recording is going to go, but we'll figure it out. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your Thursday. And everybody's giving you accolades in the chat. So
thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you for allowing us to share.
You can tell we're very passionate about this topic.
Yeah, so I wanted to give you a platform to share, because so my goal as a consultant is to have everybody doing things the best way, most effective, efficient, and the best way to help the pet and the client. So for me, it warms my heart to be able to help you bring this message to other people that maybe they can learn. So I love that.
We hope you can walk away with one useful tidbit of information.
Yes, I totally did. So, all right, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.